Hello everyone and welcome back. So today we are looking at The Undoing, and I have to thank you all for your engagement. Because of you, I have screeners and this is exciting. So again, thank you. So let's keep up the engagement. And I'm excited. So I've had my finger on the pulse with this show for quite some time, and that's only because of Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant. We've seen a million murder mysteries at this point, like there's nothing new here, but this coupling is perfect, and I feel like we're about to get like a master class in acting. And this pilot episode did its job. You know what I mean? Like, it introduced us to the plot, it introduced us to the character, and it kind of left us wanting more. So I am hooked. And honestly, for those of you who thought it was a bit slow, I promise you it accelerates and you will not be disappointed. So the way this pilot episode is shot is actually quite clever. It takes place first on the day of the murder, and then it kind of takes us back in time 2 days before to try and figure out what led up to this horrific event. And they do this by introducing us to Grace and her husband Jonathon and their family. And what can I say? Like, I was sold. I felt like they were a couple. I felt like they loved each other. They seemed to have a lot of friends. Like, they just seemed like I was bought on their chemistry. Like, I really enjoyed I like looking at them, and I like watching their interaction. Grace is a therapist. It seems like she charges a lot of money for this, and she's also a relationship therapist, which will be interesting as we move through the show. And Hugh Grant's character, Jonathon, of course, he's not just a doctor, but he's a doctor for sick children. So again, they're really trying to emphasize how perfect everything looks on the outside, how kind of in sync everybody is, how settled they all are, and it works. And so the beginning of the end essentially starts with this fundraiser, specifically this planning of the fundraiser, where we're introduced to the victim, Elena. And Helena is normally, like, this threw me back. You guys let me know, because the victim is usually somebody in the background. Like, we never actually see the victim unless it's through flashbacks. But I guess in this case, we're literally watching her final days, and I thought that was quite jarring, but also like quite refreshing. So they're planning this fundraiser for Grace's school, and this is a very posh school. It costs $50,000 a year plus to, it's just one of those very expensive private schools. And I guess the idea being they're raising money so that less fortunate children are able to kind of enter and have the same opportunities and all this stuff. And so they're planning this fundraiser, and they invite Helena over to help them plan, because she kind of wanted to be part of this community since her son goes there. And this meeting was so awkward, right? So Helena sits down, you have all these rich moms kind of talking at each other. And it's one of those weird communities where people don't tell you what they think. Like, they just kind of give you a look. And then as soon as you leave the table, they start shit-talking you. Like, that's the vibe I got from these ladies. And the most important thing here is the victim herself, right? Helena, she sits down. And at first, I thought her and Grace kind of knew each other for a very long period of time, because she's really kind of studying her, right? Like, at first you're like, why is she looking at her? Is it jealousy? Is she studying her? Is she admiring her? Is she in love with her? Like, she just gives her the most intense look. And they're all sitting around, and they're all kind of noticing. And she has a baby, and the baby's like super cute, and she's a mom, and all these other rich moms can kind of afford to leave their child with babysitters. But I guess it's assumed that Elena's child is on scholarship, and they just kind of want to make her feel part of the community. And so everything's kind of going all well and good, despite these looks, until Elena basically decides to breastfeed her child in front of basically the whole table. And I thought this was such a weird scene, because first of all, you're all moms, so it's not like you've never seen a breast before. But up until this point, I didn't think anything of it, to be honest. You guys let me know. I didn't see anything passive-aggressive about it. I didn't see anything about it. I just thought it was I just thought she was drawn to Grace's character, but I didn't quite know why. And as soon as this fundraiser kind of meeting is over, I'm not going to say all hell breaks loose, but again, it's just one of those communities where as soon as you leave the table, people start shit-talking you. And, Grace's friends start calling her saying, did you see what she did? Like, how dare she pull out her breast to feed her child? Like, that was so passive-aggressive. Maybe this and that. And Grace is like, I didn't notice that at all. And as a viewer, I didn't see it as passive-aggressive. So this was kind of a red flag. I'm like, why? Okay, maybe it was passive-aggressive. And then all of a sudden, like, Grace starts seeing this girl everywhere. She starts seeing this victim everywhere. And weirdly enough, she starts talking to her husband about possibly moving out of New York, right? Like, she kind of mentions this incident with the breastfeeding, which again, shouldn't have even been an incident. Basically speculating that maybe talking about money and talking about all these things made her feel uncomfortable, and blah, 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 and that we should all move and this and that. And they have an interesting conversation. Like, there's a really good conversation between Grace and her husband, and her husband's like, well, meaningful human interaction is what we get out of living here. Everything else is kind of secondary. And there's so much like foreshadowing that, you kind of lose your mind a bit because you're looking for all these clues that may or may not be there. But all this to say, as soon as they kind of had this planning for the fundraiser, all of a sudden Grace starts to see her kind of everywhere, right? Like Elena kind of is also at her gym. There's a jarring moment where she's kind of standing in front of her like naked, talking to her. And again, you don't know what these stares are. It's like, are you studying her? Is it like, what is going on here? Like, this is just, there's something hypnotic about this woman and you can't really put your finger on it. And Grace is just kind of sitting there like, and like kind of like we all are, like, can you put on a towel? And I really enjoyed this conversation because it seems like after Grace met Elena, like she thinks about her quite often. Like she has these flashbacks of her at the gym, and it's hard to tell which are flashbacks and which are like kind of live events happening to her in the moment. Like there's a bit where Elena basically says, do I unnerve you? Do I make you nervous? And Grace is like, no, but also like, yes. But she really kind of has her face in her mind. Like this is somebody that she kind of starts thinking about. And I really enjoyed how this was shot because you don't know if this is like, if she's thinking about her or if she's actually kind of seeing her, in front of. All this to say, we get to the fundraiser, and this fundraiser is basically the last time anybody sees Elena alive. And this fundraiser, again, is really interesting because it was a really clever way of setting up the mystery. Because again, not only is it the last place that it's not only the last place that we see the victim alive, but there's like hundreds of possible suspects, right? So again, you gotta just kind of like watch it and let it go. So we get to this fundraiser and they're basically trying to raise money for the school, again, so that like less fortunate children can kind of come. And there's a cute little conversation where they're like, but they won't invite the teachers. All this to say, this is a very rich community and appearances matter. And people just kind of go through the motions and they really enjoy being perceived as good people. And a part of being a good person is kind of donating. And so they get to this fundraiser, everything seems fine. All the friends, they all have their cliques, right? As most communities, but specifically this community, like everybody seems to have their pair. Everybody seems to be off. And then Helena walks in and she looks like a Greek goddess, right? Like her breasts are out, like her dress is kind of cinched in. All the men are kind of inhaling her, and that's the first thing you notice, right? Like this was so ballsy. Like I really enjoyed this pilot episode because, again, the victim is not someone in the background. Like she's somebody who continues to study Grace. So we get to this fundraiser, and again, all the men are surrounded by Elena, and she's kind of looking over at Grace again, like really studying her, really looking at her. And Grace is like, is she looking at me? Is she not? Like, for whatever reason, they seem to have some type of connection. And some people are like that, like you meet people and you just have an automatic connection with them. As the night goes on, like everything seems to be fine until Grace basically makes her way to the bathroom and they kind of have a conversation. And up until this point, we haven't really seen them talk. It just seems to be like Nicole trying to act cool, but she kind of catches Elena crying in the bathroom and she's, kind of saying, I feel lost. I feel like I don't know what to do. Have you ever felt this way? And Grace says, I can basically offer you a session for free. And, like she didn't mean it like that, but it was kind of awkward. But all this to say, like, there's something that Elena is seeing in Grace that she either really likes or really relates to. And whatever reason, it kind of broke her, right? Like there's something about this setting, there's something about this fundraiser, there's something about seeing her and all these people together. Maybe it's because she's on the outside looking in, we don't really know. But she kind of opens up to Grace and says, I don't feel 100%, I have to get the hell out of here. Grace, bless her heart, she kind of feels for Elena, like she kind of wants to help her. She notices that she's in tears on her way out. And again, this is the last time anybody sees this woman alive. Grace kind of offers her her driver. She says, is there anything you need? Is there anything you want? And she kind of like kisses her, right? And Elena kind of makes the point of saying, you're a beautiful soul. I can feel that you're a really nice person. And the way she says that is almost in disappointment, right? Like, oh, you're a good person? That sucks. And off she goes, right? So this is the last time anyone sees her alive. And as soon as she leaves, Grace comes back and suddenly her husband has to go, right? Like he kind of gets a text and he says, I have a patient, I have to be on my way. Like there's an emergency, like maybe the patient will die, this and that. And he's also on his way. And the last few moments of this episode were really clever, right? So Again, these are the last few moments of this woman's life, and when we find out that she died, if you notice, like, she's still in her dress. So she couldn't have been killed. She was basically killed shortly after she left this party. But more importantly, you get all these interesting contrasts, right? Like, you see Elena's husband kind of alone by himself in bed. You see Nicole with her husband. She's not alone. Like, he kind of comes home after, I guess, saving this patient, and they have sex. And there's all these contrasts, right? And all these worlds that are just like about to collide. And the episode ends, of course, with news of this murder. And this murder kind of rocks everybody for several reasons. First, not only is she the mother of a student at this prep school, but again, the last time anyone saw her alive is at this fundraiser. So this is just like the stuff of movies. Also, the way everybody just had a conclusion, right? Like, things just escalate. They think it's the husband, they think it's this and that. Like, you just got news of this murder. Why? Again, this best friend is on my radar. Like, you guys let me know. She just rubbed me like the wrong way throughout. But anyways, they get news of this murder. And not only was she murdered, right? Like, her face was smashed in, and her son kind of had walked in on it after his mother had not come home. So there's all these gruesome details that the news is getting kind of wind on. But the episode ends, and basically with Grace trying to figure out where her husband is, right? Like, she kind of gets this horrible news. She wants to inform him. He says that he's in a conference in Cleveland, and she's calling these hotels, and she's doing all these things trying to figure out which hotel he's staying at. And she doesn't know, right? Like, so the end of the episode basically asks, like, where is Jonathon? And I thought it was interesting that she was calling all these hotels because I guess they're so comfortable with each other that she doesn't really bother to ask him where he's staying. Like, again, the whole point of this episode is to show their synchronicity, to show how much trust they have in one another, that she doesn't really need to know where he is or what he's doing. Like, she trusts him completely. Like, their marriage is perfect, but all is not, you know, what it seems. So overall, I thought it was excellent. I was hooked. I enjoyed their chemistry. I'm here to watch this acting. Again, there's been a million murder mysteries. Like, this is not a plot line that, you know, there's only so many ways you can kind of do these stories, but what sold me is the acting, and just the quality of interaction between all the characters was enough for me. So you guys let me know what you think, and until next week, trust me when I say you will not be disappointed. This is the show you need. This is the show you need that you didn't even know you wanted. But take my word, it'll give you something to talk about week after week. And yeah, give me your first impressions, and I will see you next Sunday.